Can some alcoholics recover to just drink a little bit? My dad maybe drinks a few times a year. This was after decades of virtually drinking every day. Probably not common. It's been several years he's been good. Yes. It is a misconception that recovery is a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Recovery is more than just quitting drinking. It's working on the reasons why someone may have a substance misuse issue in the first place. Some people feel they need to be completely sober to recover, and some feel a sense of recovery being able to control their intake. Someone who quits drinking but does not work on their issues may not be in recovery. There is a term called dry drunk, which essentially means the same unhealthy behaviors are present even after quitting drinking, because of not addressing the underlying reason for their drinking. I have a deep passion for helping those living with mental health, substance misuse challenges, and I am currently in school aiming to get my BSW. Feels like a good time to share my story. I was a raging alcoholic and drug addict for many years. I kept having nights where I did really out of character things and made an asshole out of myself. And I decided after one of these nights that I was going to quit drinking hard liquor and stick to beer. That instantly helped me a lot. I was still drinking, but I wasn't embarrassing myself as much. I would have stayed in this phase if it weren't for this next thing. I became my sister's caregiver, and in my state the Gov doesn't pay caregivers for mental disabilities, and my sister is schizophrenic. Point is, money is tight. And I decided that morally I can't justify paying for booze when we are having trouble paying for her medication. So I made a rule for myself that I would drink if someone else paid, but I'm not paying for it. Next thing I knew, it had been 5 years since the last time I was drunk. I had a handful of drinks in those 5 years, but never enough to get drunk. For me, it was a lot simpler than it is for a lot of other people. My story is rare, but it is possible. I was only an alcoholic for a relatively short period of time. 3 years. And in the beginning of my recovery, I still had some occasionally. But now I don't even want to smell the stuff. Honestly, it doesn't worth it. If it's really hard for you to resist, I guess you decide what to do. But I would recommend to slowly cut it out completely. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I was a binge drinker. I couldn't stop after I had one. Once I started, I'd drink till I blacked out every single time. I was also addicted to cocaine and Valium. Then I had a shrooms trip which unlocked the repressed trauma I had been running from and allowed me to process it and let go of it. With nothing to run from, my need for drugs and alcohol completely fell away and stopped on their own without me trying. I don't take drugs anymore, but occasionally I have a beer or two if I'm out for dinner, and I can now drink like a normal person, which is not something I would have ever believed was possible for me in this lifetime. It honestly feels like a miracle. Anything that comes down to human behavior is never gonna be 100% this or 100% that. There are always exceptions, and while I don't know a percentage for your question, I'm quite positive that some people can manage. I wouldn't say it's a good bet though. I only have an anecdote, but it's curious. My grandfather hasn't touched a drink in 15 years after the aftermath of a frat life and years in public service and politics. Different times for sure. Smelling of booze after 4 p.m. didn't even raise an eyebrow. Needless to say, it went overboard. He sobered up with professional help, and kept it that way. He enjoys the occasional Marc de Champagne praline around Xmas, or my pasta sauce that comes with some Chianti in it. While this isn't drinking, per se, he never accepts as much as a pint of beer. I never saw him tipsy or anything after his therapy. He kicked smoking at the same occasion. So either he's damn strong or his therapist was some sort of guru. I've had a couple beers once since I decided to cut out alcohol. I wouldn't recommend it to others that are unsure if they can handle it, and it would be selfish and morally bankrupt to pressure a friend or partner to drink again because you want to have fun. I consider myself fairly strong-willed, having quit both smoking and drinking cold turkey. But I don't see any reason to tempt fate, and know it could turn into a habit again if the circumstances were right. For me, absolutely not. One's too many, and a million ain't enough. Of course I know him. He's me. Absolutely. Different things will work for different people. I went from drinking a fifth of hard liquor every night for roughly 25 years to having a few beers or wines a few times a year to celebrate, but never being regular. You know what doesn't work for me? The religious tone that all the ah or nah meetings seem to have, and the philosophical notion that we're too weak to have even one drink. But for men who are wired to be psychologically enslaved by something, I suppose it's healthier to be a slave to God than to the bottle. And I'm that way with everything. I dabble with several hard drugs in the same manner. It's just about using your self-control. But not everyone has self-control. And if that is the case, you must abstain entirely. Some can, some can't. My mom was an alcoholic and now drinks beer every now and then without having a major relapse and binging. It depends on the person, but I wouldn't recommend ever going back to alcohol if you struggled with addiction at some point. I was a daily drinker alcoholic. I stopped completely for about 10 years. Now I have a drink about 3 times a year, and it's been going fine for a few years now. I know a guy. His brother went 14 years without even smelling alcohol. One night, that guy talked his brother into having just a drink or two. Fast forward a year or two after that, his brother now has many garbage bags filled with empty 60-ounce bottles of vodka. All it took was a few drinks to drag him right back down again. Personally, the only ones I know who can were those who drank after trying to overcome a different addiction. Alcohol wasn't their first choice. I know I can't. Some can. A couple glasses of wine or champagne at an event. A cider on a really hot day. But in my experience personally? No. I was a binge drinker, and I don't drink alcohol or non-alcoholic drinks. I don't want the taste on my palate. I don't bring alcohol into my home, and I don't go places where people are drinking to drunkenness. I might go with my family to the pub for a drink where my mom and her husband might have a drink or two with dinner. But that's it. I won't risk my sobriety. It's been far too hard fought for. Yes, I always bought into the once an addict, always an addict stuff, and thought that one sip would have an alcoholic immediately falling off the wagon. But my wife managed to give up alcohol completely. And now, 5 years later, she's able to have the occasional drink without slipping back into drinking every day. Of course, for other people it might not work like that, and caution is advisable. Yes, I've known several who could cut back to moderate amounts after years of overindulgence. And others who had to abstain 100% forever. Number one size fits all. No, but it is a common thing alcoholics tell themselves right before a major relapse.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.